Good morning. It is Tuesday, April the 6th, and this is the drill. And now for our daily declaration for spiritual warfare. You are redeemed from the curse through the power of my Son. You are my mighty warrior, and I have given you my armor that you may be able to be victorious over the enemy. Use my shield of faith, for with it you will be able to put out all the flaming darts that Satan will try to use against you. Be strong and courageous, for the enemy desires to destroy you altogether. When Leviathan stands before you with sparks of fire spewing from his mouth and smoke going out of his nostrils like a boiling pot or a forest fire, you will have the power to utterly defeat him. You will be able to quench every burning light that he uses to try to inflict his destruction upon you. In the name of my Son, Jesus, you will be able to rebuke every firebrand set against your life. Prayer declaration. In your power, Lord, I quench with the shield of faith every fiery dart the enemy sends my way. In the name of Jesus, I quench the darts of jealousy, envy, anger, bitterness, and rage set against my life. I bind and cast out every fiery serpent sent against me, and I will not be burned by the fire of the enemy. Amen. And this is from the Daily Declarations for Spiritual Warfare by John Lockhart. So he's written a lot of good books. I like this better than the prayers that I was using before because these are prayers that acknowledge the devil. It occurs to me that's one of the biggest problems with Christianity today is not enough emphasis on Satan and the devil and the Satan's works in our country. Nothing makes sense if you look at things strictly from a God standpoint. If you say, well, all there is God and I don't believe in Satan, nothing in the world makes sense. And this is what the left wants you to do, by the way. They've infiltrated the churches so they can de-emphasize Satan, de-emphasize the devil, and take away any type of binary arguments, therefore. But it makes no sense. Why does God let this happen? Why does God have that happen? There's all kinds of things, atrocities that we see in the world today, and if we only believe in God, it makes no sense. You have to include Satan. When you include Satan, everything falls into place. So you must include Satan in your thinking, and that's why I'm reading these daily declarations for spiritual warfare. Now, when I come back, we're going to have as a matter of fact, right now I'm going to go ahead and have everybody stand and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And when I come back, I'm going to be covering fighting fire with fire, marrying the homeless, Joe Biden, Megan-Markle, and inflation versus debt. All that when I come back. Thinking about the shooting in Washington, D.C., in which an officer was killed, I was listening to Joe Pags, and one of his callers was talking about another police officer died, blah, blah, and it's another police officer. The proper way to think about this is another police officer died. I think the guy was saying at the hands of a kook was what he was trying to say. And I said, he died at the hands of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, the people that have been sowing hatred against police departments, sowing and creating they're the ones that are encourage the idea of defund the police, etc., and have been the ones on the forefront to encourage people to hate the police. And this is what happens when you do that. Now, further, what I want to say is what you hear in regards to shootings, whether it involves a police officer, shootings or killings, but particularly shootings, is that the left starts engaging in political propaganda immediately. The right doesn't do it. The right doesn't engage the left at all. The right seems to not be able to know where the battle is. Okay? The battle's on Bunker Hill, but they go somewhere else. And they start shooting in all directions somewhere else. And then everybody gets to wonder, what are you doing? What are you shooting at? And they're doing this with, again, neutrality and facts, because they think, well, our job is not to engage the enemy in the way that the enemy is engaging us. That we must stick with the facts, and that if we go ahead and repeat the facts, then the facts will out. Not always. And also, that works in a situation in which we have a battle, a war in which there are rules, recognized rules on both sides. When you have one side that decides that the rules are whatever they want the rules to be, whenever they want the rules to be them, then you're in a free-for-all, basically. And you're going to have to reconsider. You're going to have to be thinking and doing things the same way your enemy is. Use the rules when they're going to work for you, and other than that, again, it's a free-for-all. So in other words, if the left is going to engage in attacks of political propaganda, then it's necessary and vital for the right to use counter propaganda. We want to, when we're speaking amongst ourselves, we want to keep an idea of what's real and not real, just for the sake of our own sanity. Yes. And so we know when it is we're talking propaganda. The left, sometimes, they don't even know whether they're talking truth, they don't know whether they're talking propaganda, and they don't care. The ends justify the means, might makes right. And we need to keep an eye on what's real and differentiate that from what, yes, is propaganda or partisanship. But if we're going to be engaged on the basis of partisanship, we need to be able to respond. We need not be afraid to respond in kind. There's nothing wrong with being a partisan. There's everything wrong with being neutral. There's everything wrong with being neutral. None of us are neutral. Not politically, not in any other way. So neutrality is simply a lie, a fiction. So when the enemy is engaging us with political propaganda, we need to be able to respond in kind. So as far as I'm concerned, anything negative that happens in this country, since the culture has been dominated by the left for the past 50 years, is on the left. Who's on the left? Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. So they're always going to take the gaffe first. They're the leaders on the left. They're the ones that are going to have to bear the responsibility politically, socially, and otherwise. So in the case of the shooting, who is it that runs around encouraging people to hate the police, encouraging black people to hate the police? It's Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. How do they do that? By encouraging cities and, or I'll say municipalities, counties, and states to, quote, defund the police, unquote. They're loud and proud about that. And because of that message that they're sending, that police officers considered as individuals don't count, they don't matter, then we end up with tragedies like this. And so furthermore, I demand that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer apologize, not only to the officer that passed away, but to his family, immediately apologize. And since they're the ones that created his death, but if there's any justice, they would be put on trial for murder. But since that we can't expect that to happen, then I will settle for their immediate resignation from the House of Representatives and the Senate, respectively. A lot of the people on the left talk about or pretend that they care about the homeless, and I say that they don't. If they really want to show caring about the homeless, marry a homeless person. That's my challenge to every person on the left. Every single person on the left, or even, here's an even better challenge. You're really down for the struggle, you're married, get a divorce, marry a homeless person. Look at that. Then you are really making social strides. You are really down for the struggle, and you're making sacrifices. You're really martyring yourself here. Marry a homeless person. Marry a hobo or hoboette. Further, this works because we've been discouraged, brainwashed by the left not to judge. What they mean is, don't judge people's character. Judge people by their personality. There's somebody I know, a Facebook friend and a former coworker and colleague that is getting married. And this person surprised me, and it surprised everybody. It just came out of nowhere. No one had any idea that this person was even dating. Well, I may as well say she went ahead and so she put on this Facebook post of the wedding, the proposal. And so the guy that's involved here, I am familiar with, used to be also another former coworker, but personality-wise, he's a relatively he's a fun guy. Let's put it that way. He's exciting, he's fun, but character-wise, he leaves a lot to be desired. He was involved in with the company he worked for, fraud. He was lucky that they didn't charge him outright, go to the police department, have him arrested and prosecuted for fraud, because that's exactly what he was doing with the company. But I'm not going to go into any details there. Also, he has a tendency to have a temper, and if he wants something done a certain way and you don't want to do it that way, then he's going to get all huffy about it. And he's going to go off on you, make threats and whatnot. He did that with a parking attendant. What is it they say is, if you want to know about somebody, watch how they treat the help. How do they treat waiters and waitresses? And in this particular case, look how he treated the parking attendant. And he ended up resigning behind that. So he came back to work. They allowed him to come back to work after the frauds that he was committing came to light. So he comes back to work and ends up having to resign short time later. Again, great personality, and that's, I'm sure, what this woman is considering when she's marrying him, is his personality and his desire to be with her. And not stopping and thinking about and looking at his character or lack thereof. Because if she stopped and considered his character for one split second, she wouldn't marry him. That's, anyways. So that being said, that's why I'm saying if marriage is going to be a very casual event, then particularly for the left, then why not the left can make? And I was thinking about if you want to make a statement, or for some reason it came to me the idea. I think it was the idea that came to me was she would be better off marrying a homeless person. Because if all you're going to do is consider the personality of the person that you're going to marry, you may as well marry a hobo. Then what you're doing is you're killing two birds with one stone. You're marrying somebody that you think has a pleasant personality, good for you, plus you're taking somebody off the street that's good for society. Okay? And then the further thought, hey, that's a perfect challenge for the people on the left. If you're a lefty and you are down for the struggle, you want people to get off the street, make the sacrifice. Problem with the left today is that they're not willing to sacrifice. They're not willing to be martyrs to the cause. Nancy Pelosi, as I'm sure, has a huge estate. Big home, $30,000 refrigerator, $200 gallons of ice cream. And how many of them are in there? How many gallons? It's not like, what do you got an army to feed? I think you have 5 or 6 of these gallons in there. Who are you gonna feed with that? An army? You can't be for your family. Most of your kids are adults, or all of your kids at this particular point should be adults unless you've been busy adopting recently. So who are you going to feed with that? Anyways, so Nancy Pelosi's down for the struggle. Make a sacrifice. For the first time in your life, make a sacrifice. Divorce your husband, marry a homeless man. Okay? I don't just say that you have to leave him smelly. Get him off the street, get him cleaned up, run him through the laundry, run him through the car wash, and then bring him home. And make sure that he stays on the straight and narrow. Make sure that he stays off drugs and etc. Now you're killing two birds with one stone. You get somebody with, and again, go find somebody with a pleasant personality. I don't say you have to go out and marry somebody that's going to be nasty towards you, but find somebody with a pleasant personality, but marry the homeless. You want to solve the problem, you on the left, you want to set the example, make a sacrifice, marry the homeless. Thank you. I wanted to make note of the fact that I heard Joe Biden, a clip of Joe Biden yesterday, and I've heard it before, and I've wanted to talk about it for a while. Is Joe Biden uses the very technique I'm telling you and have told you to use. Good enough for Joe Biden, good enough for everybody else, good enough for me under that theory. And that is a technique for shutting down speculation. The left likes to use speculation as a weapon in order to try to elicit some sort of a confession. A lot of times they can't get you to confess outright, then they want you to confess that something is a possibility. Or they'll play peekaboo with the truth. They'll suggest that they have sources that they may or may not have, and then dare you to refute that. And so the example is Joe Biden was asked about Hunter Biden. And it was actually a fundraising event, and one of his supporters stood up and asked him about it and said, some people have said that Hunter Biden, blah, 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 whatever the situation is about Hunter Biden and his laptop, etc. And Joe shut that down right away. He said, no, they did not. He didn't try to argue with these mysterious folks that this guy was alleging existed. Excuse me. He wasn't trying to argue with that because he knows that if you can get into an argument, you're conceding the possibility. And he knows the strongest argument he can make is to shut it down and to say that it's impossible. So he told this man, he shut it down. He said, no, they don't. You're a liar. Okay? And you and I get to use that the same way. If you're in a situation where, for instance, some people say that you're a Nazi, you don't say, oh, well, they're mistaken. That's not as strong as saying, no, there isn't. You want to communicate the fact that not only are you not such a person, but there's no possible way anyone could think that you're such a person. Otherwise, you leave the door open. You're conceding, well, some people might think so, but I'm not. And when you concede that somebody might think so, you're doing so under the anything is possible theory. No, it isn't. Some things are impossible, and it is impossible for anyone to think that I am a Nazi kind of thing. So, again, good enough for old Joe, good enough for me, good enough for you. So when you hear people saying, well, somebody said, so-and-so said, people are saying, my sources say, you shut that down and say, no, they don't. Nobody says that. You're a liar. It's very sharp. If you do this with somebody that you're acquainted with or friends with, it may be a friendship ender. But it has to be done because they're potentially, and in reality, I got to say that, but it may end your friendship with this person, but what kind of a friend makes vague accusations about you in terms of being, say, a Nazi? Who does that? Okay, that's not a friend. Okay, so you need to be sharp about it. No, you're a liar. Now what you've done is you put the burden of proof on them where it belongs. They're going to make an accusation. I accuse you of being this, and here's my proof. That's fair. But making a suggestion or hinting so that you can try to elicit some sort of a response that looks like somebody has this, the kind of response that you would get from somebody who has a guilty conscience is not fair. It's bad. But you got to look for that, and when you encounter it, shut it down. and then claim your victory and walk away. Okay? So you say, nope, you have no such sources, you're a liar. See you later. Bye-bye. And you might even say, you know what? Not only are you a liar, but I don't want to associate with liars. So until you're ready to apologize and make amends, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Goodbye, and walk away. Even better. I'm listening to the news from the Hugh-Hewitt show and 4:30 a.m. and they're talking about there's a British news guy interviewer, I forget what his name is, that got supposedly into some trouble over the Meghan-Markle situation and her interview with Oprah Winfrey. And I keep thinking, why do we even bother to discuss anything to do with Meghan Markle and Harry? These are guys, people that are out into the world trying to have their cake and eat it too, trying to use the royalty as a shield and as a weapon. They have all the apparent authority of the crown, but none of the responsibilities. They get to go off jaunty, jolly, and do whatever they want, but still be referred to and ostensibly treated like prince and princess. So then the second thing is that I don't understand what we're talking about is Meghan Markle didn't say anything. She made no accusation. She made a vague statement. She refused to name names, who said any of this, and she refused to draw a conclusion about whatever it is that was said. Okay? Everybody, the value and the object of her statement were assigned by analysts. It's the analysts that are making accusations. They're doing so in a very vague way. And this is part of the way things are working in our society today. You don't have to come out and make an outright accusation, because then you have responsibility. You have the responsibility for backing it up. If Meghan Markle had come out and said the Queen is a racist, then she has to back it up. That's a big charge. You have to back it up 6 ways from Sunday, and if she can't do it, it's the world is going to look at her askance, and they will eventually. Right now, she presents herself as a victim, but is she really? Is she a victim or is she a perpetrator? So, we don't know, because she won't come out, make the accusation. She won't lay her cards on the table. Again, she wants to have her cake and eat it too. She wants to be able to have the effect of making a racism allegation without having to have the responsibility for backing it up. So, and this is a kind of tactic. This is where it pays to listen. Listen carefully. And if you doubt me, please doubt me. Unlike Rush Limbaugh, I don't say don't doubt me. I say please doubt me. Go back to the interview and listen to it again. Listen to what she said. Who did she name? Look at this from a subject, object, predicate, a grammatical standpoint. Did she name names? Did she even isolate it down to one particular individual? My recollection is she didn't. She said something along the lines of people, more than one. Who were these people? And Oprah Winfrey was irresponsible for not pressing the point. And any responsible person, interviewer, would have said, who? And if you're not going to give me names, then we're not going to continue this interview. And shut it down. Because otherwise it's just irresponsibility. It's tabloid. It's absolutely tabloid. She's using tabloid techniques. And then I think it was later on in the interview that she whines and complains about the tabloids. And so again, but these are people that want to have their cake and eat it too. They can't. And they will get their comeuppance, and I'm sure they're getting it even as we speak, even though they may not realize it. So You can't have your cake and eat it too, and anybody that tells you differently is a liar. But the main thing I'm trying to communicate here, listen carefully. When it's interviews, the news people, listen carefully to what they say. Are they really saying what you think they're saying? Okay, they like to use tone of voice, and they like to use facial expressions to communicate rather than using grammar and rhetoric. Okay, because you can't refute a facial expression. It's hard to refute tone of voice, although you can refute grammatical and rhetorical errors. So listening to Hugh-Hewitt, and he's interviewing somebody, I don't know who it was, I don't care, about inflation. And so one of the things that he said was, if you're upset about inflation like I am, call me. No, that's stupid, Mr. Hewitt. They should call their representatives. If you think that inflation is coming, call your representatives. Call the White House. Don't call a talk show host. What the hell is a talk show host supposed to do about inflation? That's stupid. So one of the key things that his guest said, though, when Hugh-Hewitt, who always does this, says he's upset about something, but he doesn't understand why nobody else is. Nobody else seems to be upset about the prospect of inflation, Mr. Guest. What do you think about that? And the guest said, well, because we've had inflation 2 times out of the 9 times it's been predicted. Which is true. Every time I turn around, somebody's predicting, oh, we're going to have inflation, we're going to have inflation, we're going to have massive inflation. No inflation. None. We've had 0 inflation, and like for decades. That was one of the big deals about the minimum wage. Usually you raise the minimum wage in response to inflation. The cost of goods go up, and so the politicians, they go ahead and then raise the minimum wage in order to help the workers stay ahead of rising prices, that kind of thing. But we haven't had inflation in decades. Last time I can remember having inflation was in the 70s, when they used to have win buttons, whip inflation now. It was during the Nixon administration. So that's a good point that his guest was making, is that the predictions for inflation have been overstated, way overstated. And I say that and I'll say it again, that the real issue is not inflation, but the debt. Because we have compound interest. And that means that we have to keep rolling over those bonds faster and faster and faster. We haven't done a budget in this country in God knows how long. One of Congress's primary responsibilities is to create a budget, and we haven't done it, whether it's Republicans in charge or Democrats in charge. All we've done is continuing resolutions, and it's always to deal with the debt. Do a continuing resolution to keep the government going, but basically it's to raise the debt ceiling. So as the interest climbs, then we're going to have more and more of these continuing resolutions. They're going to come closer and closer together. It's going to be once every year, once every 6 months, once every 3 months, once a month, once a week, once every day, until we get to the point where the interest is going up so fast we're not going to be able to keep up with it. And at that particular point, we have reached a crisis. And I mean a huge crisis. And that's looming, and it will happen sooner and do more damage than the inflation, the imaginary inflation will. That's what's really going to put us in a bind in the long run. Once we get to the point where we can't have enough continuing resolutions to go ahead and service the interest on the debt, now what? Do we default? It's a huge crisis. It's looming, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later in our lifetime, probably in the next few years. We're looking at having that problem. So the interest on the debt is a much bigger problem than is inflation, or what we imagine inflation, the imagination or the threat. Let's put it that way: the threat of inflation. So, like I said, Mr. Hewitt's guest was correct in saying the reason nobody's interested in this is because people like Hugh Hewitt they always want to be first. Hugh Hewitt wants to be first to predict. I was right. I predicted inflation. Oh, so what? So what? Does that make you a genius? And there's a lot of people today that think that smart means making accurate predictions. No, it isn't. Smart is never changed. Smart is the rate at which you learn. People that learn fast are smart. People that learn slow are stupid. Just that simple. And it seems to me that Hugh Hewitt is closer to being stupid than smart. And that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. Remember to be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win. I'm Ron, and that's The Drill.